This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and the community in which you now reside.
My name is Staff Sergeant Jeremy Armstrong, and I live in Harwich, Massachusetts.
What was your childhood like?
My childhood was typical of any Cape Cod kid. I was the son of a Chatham fisherman. My mom worked in the community, so growing up it was a lot of time on the beaches and the ocean and working all summer, and typical Cape Cod kind of childhood.
What did you enjoy doing as a kid?
I enjoyed sports. I played a lot of sports growing up through school and high school. I was captain of the football team my senior year in high school, and that was probably my favorite thing growing up.
What made you want to join the military?
I was a junior in high school when 9/11 happened. I remember it, the exact moments. I mean, I was in my high school guidance counselor's office at Harwich High School, back before Monomoy when there was a Harwich High School. And that had a profound impact on me. And then before the invasion of Iraq, I remember watching that with my father. And then I went to college in Boston, and I did some really cool things there. I worked with a lot of veterans while I was in school, but always kind of wanted to do more. So I joined the Army, and I wanted to take part in my generation's conflict. I want to be a part of that history, something bigger than myself.
How did your military career begin?
It started while I was in college. I went to Northeastern University in Boston, and I joined ROTC. So I was trained to be an officer. I did that for about 3.5 years. And then my senior year, I came to kind of a realization that the people I looked up to weren't necessarily officers, but more so the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants, the master sergeants, those grizzled old veterans that everybody looked up to, that just seemed so tough and rough, and just that's kind of what I wanted to be. So I left ROTC and enlisted, and then I came in as a E1 at the very bottom and worked my way up.
What was your family's reaction to you wanting to join the military?
They were very supportive. I mean, they were a little bit hesitant at first because, I mean, it was scary back then. I mean, this was 2005, and things were kind of dicey in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and as any parent or any family would be, they'd be a little bit concerned. But they're extremely proud, and they've been extremely supportive throughout my career.
What was your happiest memory from the war?
The happiest memory from the war, I spent 12 months in Iraq, and it was definitely just the camaraderie with the guys, the brotherhood. Shared experiences you go through, the good and the bad, and how tired you are, and how crazy it can be, how crazy it can get, the close calls and all that. That was definitely probably the best thing about it.
Could you tell us a little bit more about some of your friends from the service?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about the Army is that it takes people from all different backgrounds all across the country. So I have friends that were farmers in Idaho to guys from inner cities and stuff like that, and everywhere in between. Some are careers, and some have stayed in and continue to progress, and others have gotten out. So it's kind of cool that, especially with social media and how that works, being able to stay in touch with everybody. I've got friends in every state and every corner of the country and all over the world. So it's pretty special, for sure.
Would you say that you had a best friend during your time?
Maybe not a best friend. I've had a lot of very close friends, sure. Most of them have gotten out. A couple have passed away, and that's sad. But we remember them fondly and think about them often and share those stories with each other. But it's been good.
What was the transition from civilian to military life like?
From civilian to military, it's different for sure. I thrive in a structured environment, so it helped. For me, it wasn't too bad. I understand how the rank process works, and I was a little bit older when I joined. I joined ROTC when I was 20, and then went active when I was 24. So I might be better at taking directions than a 17 or 18-year-old at that point, and I had a little bit of experience coming in, but for the most part, it worked out pretty well for me.
Who was the most influential person you met during your time in the military?
I was very fortunate to have two mentors. And mentorship is important in any aspect of your career, but especially the Army, I think. And I had two. His name was Command Sergeant Major Scott Peer, and the other was First Sergeant Chris Osborne. One is retired, and the other's Sergeant Major now in Louisiana. So they've helped me throughout my career and guided me and saw potential in me and pushed me to succeed where I didn't think I could. So their mentorship and guidance has meant everything to me.
Could you elaborate on maybe your darkest memory from the war?
We got back, and one of my best friends suffered a heart condition and passed away. And that was shocking. He was just turned 21, had the whole, we'd just gotten back from Iraq, and he had the whole world in front of me. I think he just got his first girlfriend, just got his first car, and he passed away very suddenly. Probably from complications of the war on his heart. He had a pre-existing condition that was unidentified, and the stress on his heart caused it to give out. And so I was selected to be the one to identify him at the morgue and all that, and I escorted him home. So that whole trip in my dress uniform, carrying the flag and on the plane and all that, and then spending time with his family in California, that was difficult. By far the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. But I mean, it was an honor, but it's not easy.
Could you tell us about the transition back to civilian life from military life?
So one of the main reasons why I left active duty is because I married a doctor. And it was difficult for her to move around the country with her licensing and insurance and stuff like that. So I had a plan to get out of active duty and do what's called the active guard, where I can continue to serve and work for the National Guard full time. And I was fortunate to be able to do that within a year, a year exactly of when I left active service. In the meantime, I worked locally and did everything I could to set myself up for success so I could do that. But it wasn't easy. You have a sense of importance, like you're doing important work when you're wearing the uniform and doing this every day. And then transition out of that can be very difficult. So it's important to maintain contact with your friends and other people that have experiences to not feel isolated or go down too far down a dark hole, you know what I mean?
Could you talk about maybe some of the differences in culture from where you grew up to where you served?
I mean, growing up here on Cape Cod, it's a privilege. It can be a privileged life. It's a very easy place to grow up. It's safe. I wouldn't say sheltered, but it's pretty close to that. And then be able to travel around the world and see places that are a lot less fortunate. It's impactful. I was stationed in Texas for about 6.5 years, and how different that is culturally from up here, where we have such a stronger emphasis on education and in schools and stuff like that. And then going overseas and seeing how people struggle just to get by. A lot of things we take for granted. I mean, just getting into country and how hot it is or the smells, and it can be overwhelming. So it's definitely fortunate to have moved back to Cape Cod older, having experienced these different things, and being able to re-experience where I grew up through a different perspective, older and married, and kind of get to rediscover Cape Cod all over again, which is I'm very lucky to do that.
How has your time in the military changed the way that you think now to this day?
I mean, I've been in the military for most of my adult life, the entirety of it. So it's really been the defining characteristic of who I am. I put a strong emphasis on leadership throughout my career and taking care of others, my soldiers and other people, helping them succeed, because that's been the most rewarding part of being a non-commissioned officer in the Army. It's having had so many soldiers that I've developed and watching them succeed, and that's been the best part about it. So really just helping people, that's really all it comes down to.
Was the climate very different from here on Cape Cod, and could you tell us about some of the weather that you experienced?
Yeah.
The extreme conditions?
So I mean, even just having been stationed in Texas for so many years, you'd go 4 or 5 months at 110 plus degrees. You could see a rain cloud coming a couple months away. So if you got a Jeep like I had down there, you could keep the top off for quite a while. Then you get flash floods, and it was different for sure. And then overseas, I spent my time in Iraq, and temperatures got up to 130 plus degrees, 133, 134. It's like setting the oven on broil and then open the door and put your head inside. You know, I remember when I got off the plane in Kuwait and how hot that was in August 2010. The dust storms were crazy, and it's just so completely different. But it was cool to see, definitely.
How were your personal relationships affected after your experience at war?
It wasn't too bad. I mean, I left for Iraq in a relationship and came back not in one. And I was fortunate that within probably 2 weeks of coming back, I met the woman who would be my wife. And we've been married for almost 8 years now. So for the most part, the relationships weren't too different or too changed. I still had a lot of my guys, and I would continue to progress through the Army. And but I mean, for the most part, it wasn't changed too much. And I'm fortunate in that.
Could you tell us about how staying in touch with some of your fellow military members has maybe helped you keep an even head?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely easy to talk with them about our shared experiences and stuff like that, good and bad. And one of the cool things is watching the ones who have stayed in, watching them succeed, and watching them get promoted and go to different schools and take on new and challenging positions. They say iron sharpens iron, and we continue to push each other. You know, if my friend's doing something pretty cool, I want to do something cool like that too. So I'm going to work to get better and continue to push myself to excel. So that's one of the cool things about it, definitely.
How did being in the military give you other opportunities in your life once you came back from war?
Really is more just about perspective. I mean, I've stayed in the military, so it's what I do. I mean, I'm a professional soldier, professional leader. So what I've done in war and what I've done in my career is all kind of stayed in line with a target career path and to achieving my goals in the military. But to be able to move back home to Cape Cod and continue to do what I love to do, I'm extremely fortunate to be able to do that. And I love it. There's nothing better than being able to serve not only the country, but my local community. There's so many cool things that we've done here that I'm just so proud of. And that's probably been the best part about it.
Could you tell us about maybe some or any missions you were involved with in your time in Iraq?
I got there in August 2010, and we had just shifted from Operation Iraqi Freedom to Operation New Dawn. And with that was the expectation that we're closing out the war in Iraq. And so we were beginning to shut down bases and continuing our patrols and our reconnaissance missions throughout the country. Some bad guys came back in from Iran and brought some more bad guys with them. And attacks stepped up a little bit in some of the areas we were at. And but all in all, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. That's for sure.
Is there um, any mission that really changed the way that you saw things, like maybe any values or morals? Or
No, we didn't. I was very fortunate that we didn't come up into any direct fire engagement. I mean, I didn't have to fire my weapon in anger at anybody. I was very fortunate about that. Most of the experiences I had were just being on the lookout for IEDs, roadside bombs, and we got mortared and rocketed pretty frequently, almost on a daily or a couple times a day basis. But it didn't change my morals or anything like that.
We're running a little short on time.
Okay.
And we appreciate this interview, and we just want to ask you a couple more questions.
Sure.
All right. Could you elaborate on some of the differences in the reality of war than what you expected?
A lot of it can be boring at times. I mean, you go on the same type of missions 10, 12 hours a day, every day for a year. You know, it gets kind of boring. It's hot and you're just tired and you're just overworked. You know, your days are just so long. And that was probably it. The unit that I went with had just gotten back from an 18-month deployment before, where 80% of my platoon had gotten Purple Hearts, and they suffered quite a few casualties. So I wasn't really sure what we were getting into, and it ended up being considerably less kinetic, and it's just timing and where you are. But it's not what you see in the movies for the most part. You know, some of it is, but a lot of it's just, I was just passing the time.
Could you tell us about your experiences in the camp at the military and what you guys ate and some of your daily routines?
Yeah, overseas. So we were at this place called FOB Echo, Forward Operating Base Echo. And there was a dining facility there that was staffed by outside foreign contractors, and the food was just kind of general dining facility food, like cafeteria type food. And we might be able to get in there once a day, but most of the time we're on mission, so we were out there with MREs, the meals ready to eat, or granola bars or whatever, a lot of stuff that we get from care packages back home and stuff like that. But typical day when you're not on a mission, I mean, we were on a mission every day, but when we weren't on mission, it was maintenance on our vehicles, our weapons, our equipment, making sure everything is good to go. And if you're not there, your downtime, if you had any, was hopefully usually at the gym, or maybe just relaxing and watching a movie or something like that in your room.
Could you talk about some of your training at the ROTC that you mentioned earlier?
ROTC was like a college-based training, teaching to be a leader. It didn't really start until I went active duty, and I went to basic training. I went to something called one-station unit training. I went active duty as a cavalry scout, so my basic and advanced individual training was all together with the drill sergeants, and they taught you the basics of Army stuff. But even still, your training really doesn't begin until you get to your first unit, and you're in that platoon, and you're in that squad, and you're learning how things operate. And I was heavy cavalry, so I was in a Bradleys and tanks in my unit. My first position was as a Bradley driver, and we were in the field week on, week off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, leading up to our deployment. Just fine-tuning everything and getting to be a well-oiled fighting machine. And then I became a Bradley gunner, and I did a lot of that in Iraq, which is kind of cool. And then I've had different opportunities since. I've been to air assault school, where I rappelled out of helicopters from 100 feet, and I've been to airborne school, where I've jumped out of jets and planes from over 1,000 feet, and that was a lot of fun. And when I joined the Guard, I transitioned to infantry, and I've done more of that for the last 3.5 years, 4 years.
Could you tell us about some of your interactions with the civilians in Iraq?
My interactions with the civilians in Iraq was fairly limited. We'd see people through the streets. We're in a pretty urban environment. People mostly kept to themselves. I never had one conversation with a female civilian over there. It's just part of the culture where the women don't talk to other men. A lot of it was just with kids coming up and asking for toys and chocolate and stuff, and we always used to, every mission we'd go out, we'd try and have a spare bag of extra just toys or soccer balls or whatever, give some of the kids when we went out there. But that was most of it. A lot of interaction with local Iraqi police and Iraqi army. The Iraqi army were considerably more dependable, and you had a better idea that they were actually on your side, and you were less susceptible to an insider attack with the Iraqi army. So that was about it.
Could you tell us about some of your interactions with the Iraqi army and how they may have assisted you?
A lot of it was them watching what we did and us teaching them. And we spent a good amount of time running them through different training environments and teaching them how to do things using M16s and weapons like that, and teaching them how to shoot correctly. The fundamentals that we're taught from day one, they've gone a good time in without putting emphasis on those basics and those fundamental mechanics. So a lot was teaching them how to shoot, teaching them what we kind of do, and a lot of it was really just having them roll out on patrols with us just to show a bit of unity, that we're in this together, that kind of thing.
Could you tell us about their views of the terrorists that you were against?
Yeah, I mean, we fought a lot of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and what became ISIS after we left. Because as soon as we left, there was a power vacuum there, and it became ISIS, and they took over parts of Iraq and Syria and different stuff like that. But they wanted peace just as much as anybody else. You know, they didn't necessarily want us there all the time or long term. So the sooner they could get on their feet and take control and create a safe environment for their people and their family, the better. So.
Could you tell us about how your cooperation with the Iraqi government and local government bodies kind of changed the way that you saw the people in Iraq, and if it maybe gave you a better sense of togetherness with them?
A bit. Yeah, I mean, I sat in on a bunch of meetings with some of our officers and some of their local army and police leadership, and being able to listen to them and their goals and what their expectations were. The Iraqi people are good people, and all we wanted to do was help, and help their government, their infrastructure to be able to create the safety that they deserve.
Could you tell us a bit more about the children in Iraq? Some of the kids that you know, any soccer balls or anything like that too?
Yeah, I mean, 99% of them are good kids. You know, you get your occasional kids here and there that would throw rocks at us or whatever. But for the most part, they were good kids. You know, they'd always be asking for soccer balls or candy or chocolate, and we'd always give kids stuff. You know, stuffed animals at Christmas. I get tons of care packages from back home, and for the most part, I give a lot of it out to the local kids and stuff, because, you know, it meant more to them than it would to me. I mean, it meant a lot to me, but, you know, these kids they have nothing, you know, so it was tough. But, you know, for the most part, they were great kids.
Could you tell us about your biggest moment of relief from the war, or any close encounters you may have had?
Just getting home. Even on the way out the door, when we moved from where we were to another base closer south towards Kuwait, we took a bunch of rockets and mortars on the airfield where the birds were the day we were leaving. So until your feet are on American soil, there's always a little bit of just tension there. You know what I mean? It's just good to be home.
Could you tell us a bit about how getting home made you feel, and how, or some of the first things you did once you were home?
We got home. It's tricky because we left Kuwait, Iraq, and got to Kuwait, and we were in Kuwait for a little bit. And then when we made our final flight back, I had a quick layover in Germany, and then we got back to Fort Hood. And it's such long flights, and you go through so many time zones. You're just so disoriented and don't really know where you are. And I think we got back to America at like 12:30 in the morning, and you just didn't know what time it was, what day it was. But all the families were there and ready to greet everyone as they came back. And me and my friends, we lit up a victory cigar. We got home and had a drink and just relaxed, and kind of just enjoyed being home. And then had a couple of days off and was able to come back home to the Cape and visit and see family, and then it's back to work.
Could you talk about some of the differences as to what you do now with the active guard than when you were deployed in Iraq?
Yeah, so the guard still deploys a lot, and we're always training to deploy. So a lot of it is very similar, with the main differences being we do a lot of domestic support operations. So where on the active side, you're always worried about just going overseas. Here locally, we also respond towards different hurricanes, blizzards, tornadoes, as we had this summer, of all crazy things, and different other events throughout the state. So to be able to do the Army thing, and then also help my own community that I grew up in, you can't beat that. And with still the ever-looming additional deployments on the horizon. So it's continuing to train, helping my own community, and just keep doing what I'm doing.
Could you talk about some of the commitments you have to make as you continue to train with the active guard?
Yeah, so I do this full time, and I'm currently the readiness NCO for the headquarters unit of the aviation battalion down here on the Cape. So a lot of my duties are administrative, and that happens as you get further up in the ranks. You find yourself less in the woods doing the fun stuff and more at a desk. So I do a lot of planning, managing pay and managing career paths and helping people out with that, and just day-to-day operations.
What would you say is your favorite part about what you do?
The cool thing about the guard is that on the active side, you know where everybody lives. You see them every day. You work out with them every day. You know what they're getting paid because you know what their rank is. And it's very structured. So you're all up in everybody's stuff every day. In the guard, you only see them maybe once a month for that 1 week in a month. And people have different jobs. So that's the big challenge. Managing National Guardsmen's civilian lives. Some of them do great. Some of them need some help. We've had soldiers in the Guard who have been homeless, who have lost their homes to fires and stuff like that, who have needed steady employment. So a lot of it's helping these guys use their benefits to go to school or get better jobs. So I'll sit with them as they graduate school and update their resumes, do job interviews with them, and help them get into a place where if they're doing successful things and okay in their civilian life, they're going to be much more better in the Guard, in their Army life. So that's been one of the cool things. And like I said, the other thing is just helping out in the community. 2 days ago, 200 of us filled up our rucksacks with toys, and we marched about 5.5 miles to Boston Children's Hospital, and we donated tons of toys to all these kids, and watching them light up as we walked into the hospital in uniform with Santa hats and stuff, and more toys than they could count. That's hits you right in the feels. You know what I mean? That's what it's about.
Could you tell us about any tips you might have for young people wanting to join the military or new recruits?
Just like anything else, you get out of it what you put into it. The Army can have its good days and bad days just like any other job, but I think the difference is that the Army will help you be able to see things that you'll never see anywhere else. So if you work hard and put the effort in, then you'll be able to succeed and do amazing things.
We appreciate you coming here today and doing this interview with us. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, gentlemen.